At the airport parking lot, I found my son sleeping in his car with his twins. I asked, "Where's the $150,000 I invested in your startup?" He broke down my wife and her family took everything and claimed I'm mentally unstable. I got furious. "Pack your things. We're fixing this now." I pulled my rental car into the long-term parking lot at Toronto Pearson International Airport, feeling genuinely excited. I'd flown all the way from Vancouver just to surprise my son on his birthday, and in my head, the day was already shaping up to be a good one. At least, that's what I thought at the time. As I walked through the endless rows of parked cars, something unusual caught my attention. A silver Honda Civic sat there with fogged-up windows, like someone had been breathing inside for a while. Then I noticed movement. That's when my stomach tightened. I stepped closer, and in that instant, my heart just about stopped. It was my son. Daniel was asleep in the back seat, stretched awkwardly across the cushions. Curled up beside him were his twin boys, Ethan and Caleb, bundled together under one thin blanket. My 5-year-old grandsons were sleeping in a car, in an airport parking lot, in the middle of March. I knocked on the window. Daniel's eyes flew open, wide with panic. For a second, he just stared at me through the glass, like his brain couldn't process what he was seeing. Then I noticed something in his expression that I had never seen before. Shame. Deep, crushing shame. He slowly opened the door, careful not to wake the boys. "Dad," he said, his voice rough and hoarse. "What are you doing here?" I couldn't stop myself. The words came out shaky and sharp all at once. "What am I doing here? Daniel, what the hell is going on? Where's the house? Where's Laura? Why are you living in your car with my grandsons?" He looked away, staring down at the pavement. "It's complicated." "Complicated?" I snapped. "You're sleeping in a parking lot with 5-year-old kids in March." That's when the boys started to stir. Ethan rubbed his eyes, looked up, and saw me standing there. "Grandpa," he said softly. That one word cracked something open in my chest. "Hey, buddy," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "Why don't you and Caleb come with Grandpa and get some breakfast? Your dad and I need to talk for a bit." An hour later, Ethan and Caleb were happily eating pancakes at Tim Hortons inside the airport, thinking this was all some kind of fun adventure. Daniel and I sat at a separate table. Up close, I could really see it. He looked thinner than I remembered, exhausted, beaten down in a way that scared me. "Tell me everything," I said. He took a shaky breath before speaking. "Laura left me 3 months ago. But it wasn't just that she left, Dad. She took everything." "Everything how?" I asked. "The house, the bank accounts, the business money, all of it." I felt my jaw tighten. "The house was in both your names. She had me sign paperwork," he said quietly. "Told me it was for tax reasons, said it made sense to put the house solely in her name. I trusted her. I signed." He swallowed hard. "One day I came home from work, and the locks were changed. There was a restraining order waiting for me. Her lawyer said I was mentally unstable, dangerous, claimed I'd been threatening her." "That's insane," I said. "You've never laid a hand on anyone in your life." "I know," he said, "but she had evidence. Or at least that's what her lawyer claimed. Text messages I supposedly sent. Emails I don't remember writing. Witnesses who said they saw me acting erratic. Her parents backed her up on everything. They made me look like some unstable, controlling husband, and the judge believed them." My hands clenched into fists. "What about the money? The $150,000 I put into your startup?" Daniel's face fell apart. "She managed the business accounts," he said. "The day before she left, she transferred all of it into an investment account under her father's name. She said it was a business loan we talked about. I have no proof it wasn't, because she handled all the paperwork." "And the boys?" I asked. "The custody hearing was 2 weeks ago," he said. "I lost. I only get supervised visits twice a week. The rest of the time they're with her and her parents." I stared at him. "Why?" "They said I need to prove I have stable housing and steady employment," he replied bitterly. "But I can't get housing without money, and Laura made sure I have none." He looked down at his hands. "I'm working, but it barely covers food and this parking spot. I shower at the gym. The boys think we're just on an adventure." Rage started rising in my chest, the kind of rage I hadn't felt since my wife died. "Where do these supervised visits happen?" I asked. "At her parents' house," he said. "Her mother supervises. They watch everything I do. Take notes. I can't even hug my own sons without feeling like I'm on trial." I didn't hesitate. "This ends now," I said. "Pack up the car. You and the boys are coming to stay at my hotel. We'll figure this out, and then we're going to fix it." "Dad," he said, shaking his head. "You don't understand. Her family has money. Her father, Richard, is a real estate developer. They've got lawyers. Good ones. I can't fight them." "Maybe you can't," I said. "But we can." That night, after the boys were asleep in the hotel room, I sat down at the desk and started making calls. First was to my lawyer back in Vancouver, Chen Chun, a man I trusted for over 30 years. Then I called an old friend, Detective Laura Bennett with Toronto Police, who owed me a favor from years ago after I helped her son get into university. "Chun," I said, "I need the best family lawyer in Ontario. Money isn't an issue." There was a pause. "What's going on, Robert?" I told him everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "This smells like fraud," he finally said. The account transfers, the documents, the coordinated testimony. If what Daniel's telling you is true, this isn't just a custody dispute. It's organized theft. You need someone who handles both family law and financial crime. He gave me a name. Amanda Brooks. One of the top lawyers in Toronto, known for high-conflict custody cases involving financial abuse. Her retainer was steep. I didn't even blink. The next morning, I sat across from Amanda in her office. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, and straight to the point. Tell me everything, she said. And don't leave out details you think don't matter. I laid it all out. Daniel's story, start to finish. She took notes, asked tough questions, then leaned back in her chair. Here's what we're dealing with, she said. Your son's ex-wife and her family have used financial coercive control combined with parental alienation. They stripped him of money, credibility, and access to his children. The messages, the witnesses, the mental health claims. It's a textbook play. I leaned forward. Can we prove it? That depends, she said. Do you have any business documentation? Bank records? Emails? Anything at all? I have the wire transfer records from my investment, I said. Emails from Daniel about the business plan. But Laura controlled most of the accounts. That's a start, she said. What about Daniel's mental health? They're claiming instability. He saw a therapist last year, I said. Not because he was unstable, but because work stress was getting to him. He was trying to handle the pressure. Amanda nodded. That actually helps, she said. Records showing he proactively sought therapy work against their claims. We'll need those. Amanda leaned forward and laid out the next steps. We needed a full forensic accounting of the business finances. If money had been moved improperly, she said, they would find it. She also wanted to depose every witness who claimed Daniel was unstable. According to her, those stories wouldn't survive serious questioning. I asked how long all of this would take. Months, she said honestly. Possibly longer. Family court doesn't move fast. Then she added that we didn't have to wait for everything to be resolved. In the meantime, we could file an emergency motion to change the custody arrangement. If we could prove that the boys were now living in a stable, healthy environment with Daniel and me, and that Laura had gained custody through deception, there was a real chance the court would grant temporary joint custody while the larger case played out. Do it, I said without hesitation. Over the next 2 weeks, I turned into a man with one purpose. I rented a 3-bedroom apartment in Mississauga, fully furnished it, and made sure Ethan and Caleb were enrolled in a nearby school. Daniel landed a job at a tech company through a former colleague who still believed in him. Stability, finally, was starting to take shape. I made it my responsibility to help build the case. I drove to Daniel's old workplace and started talking to people who knew him best. Every single person I spoke with was stunned by the accusations against him. Daniel? Unstable? Said Alex Stevenez, his former business partner. That's ridiculous. He was always the calmest guy in the room, especially during a crisis. Laura was the volatile one. I remember her screaming at him in the office once because he stayed late working. I looked him straight in the eye. Would you be willing to testify to that? Absolutely, he said without hesitation. Next, I tracked down Daniel's therapist, Dr. Karen Shaw. She explained she couldn't release any records without Daniel's consent. He signed the paperwork immediately. When Dr. Shaw's notes came through, they told a very different story than the one Laura's lawyer had sold to the court. They showed a man dealing with normal workplace stress, using healthy coping strategies, with no signs of instability, aggression, or dangerous behavior. Then I turned my attention to Laura's family. Her father, Richard Collins, was a real estate developer based in Oakville. On the surface, everything about him looked clean and respectable. But my friend Laura, the detective, did some quiet digging. Robert, she told me, Richard Collins has been investigated twice by FinTrack for suspicious large cash deposits. No charges were laid, but there were definite red flags. Then she added something else. 3 years earlier, one of his business partners had sued him for fraud. The case was settled out of court, and the records were sealed. Can that help us? I asked. It depends on what your lawyer can uncover, she said. But it shows a pattern. Amanda brought in a forensic accountant named Stephen Park. It took him 3 weeks of digging, but he tracked every dollar that had passed through Daniel's business accounts. What he uncovered was devastating. The $150,000 I'd invested had been transferred directly into an account owned by Richard Collins. The transaction was labeled as a business loan, but there was no loan agreement, no repayment terms, no paperwork at all. Just a wire transfer made the day before Laura filed for the restraining order. And that wasn't the end of it. Over the course of 14 months, Laura had been quietly moving money out of the business. At first, the amounts were small, $500 here, $1,000 there. Then the transfers grew larger. By the time Stephen finished tracing everything, nearly $280,000 had been siphoned away through personal accounts and into her father's control. This isn't a marital disagreement, Stephen said, pointing to his report. This is embezzlement. She was draining the company while making it look like business as usual, and her father was helping her do it. Can Daniel get the money back? I asked. If we can prove fraud, yes, Stephen said. But that means criminal charges, not just civil court. This goes well beyond family law. Amanda wasted no time. She filed a series of motions, starting with an emergency request to modify custody. She presented evidence showing Daniel now had steady housing and reliable employment. She showed that the boys had been living with us for over a month, doing well in school, seeing their pediatrician regularly, and thriving. She submitted Dr. Shah's records, completely dismantling the mental instability claims. She brought in testimony from Daniel's co-workers, exposing Laura's accusations as outright lies. Laura's lawyer, a smooth-talking guy named Mark Ellison, pushed back hard. He argued that Daniel was only stable because I was financially supporting him. He claimed it wasn't sustainable and insisted the boys needed their mother. Amanda didn't let up. She deposed Laura's witnesses one by one. Under oath, their stories collapsed. Laura's friend Melissa claimed she had seen Daniel act erratically at a party. When questioned further, she admitted she hadn't actually witnessed anything. She'd only heard about it from Laura. A neighbor who claimed Daniel had shouted threats eventually admitted he never heard any actual words. He'd only seen Daniel through a window, looking angry. Then came the supervised visits, which turned out to be our strongest evidence. I attended several of them with Daniel. Laura's mother, Evelyn Collins, sat in the corner with a notebook, writing nonstop. What she didn't realize was that Daniel had started recording audio of every visit on his phone, completely legal, since it was a shared space with consent clearly posted on the wall. The recordings told the real story. The boys were happy, relaxed, and excited to see their father. They hugged him without hesitation. They called him Dad naturally. They talked about school, friends, and normal kid things. There was no fear, no tension, just two children with their father. Evelyn's written notes told a very different story. Father appeared agitated. Children seemed withdrawn. Father's tone aggressive. Every word of it was a lie. Amanda submitted the recordings to the court along with a motion to end supervised visitation, arguing that the supervision was being deliberately used to manufacture false evidence. Then came Stephen's forensic accounting report. Amanda didn't just file it with family court. She forwarded it directly to the Police Fraud Division and to the Canada Revenue Agency. Richard Collins was officially under investigation for tax evasion and fraud. Laura was now facing possible criminal charges for embezzlement. The custody hearing was scheduled for July, 6 months after I'd found my son sleeping in that parking lot. The courtroom was thick with tension. Laura sat beside her parents and her lawyer, looking confident and composed. Daniel sat next to me and Amanda. He looked nervous, but there was resolve in his eyes. The judge was Justice Helen Crawford, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for being meticulous and fair. Amanda stood and began presenting our case, step by step. The financial crimes, the false accusations, the witness contradictions, the audio recordings that exposed the manipulation of supervised visits. And the room grew very quiet. Amanda walked the court through everything, piece by piece. Dr. Shah's therapy records, proof of Daniel's steady job, evidence of his stable housing. She showed that the boys were doing well in every measurable way. Mark Ellison tried to tear it all down. He argued that Daniel's stability only existed because I was supporting him financially, and that it wouldn't last. He insisted the boys belonged with their mother and claimed they had been thriving under Laura's care the whole time. Then Amanda called Laura to the stand. "Mrs. Miller," she began calmly, "you testified that the money transferred from the business account to your father's account was a business loan. Is that correct?" "Yes," Laura said. "Where is the loan agreement?" "It was verbal." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "A verbal agreement for $150,000. "Yes," Laura said again. "My father was helping us through a difficult period." Amanda didn't miss a beat. What made it a difficult period? According to the bank records, the business was profitable and revenue was strong. Laura hesitated. Daniel was spending money recklessly. On what exactly? "I don't know," she said. "He handled expenses." Amanda pulled out a stack of documents. These bank statements showed Daniel's personal spending was steady and modest. Rent, groceries, utilities, transportation. She paused. "Meanwhile, your personal credit card records show over $30,000 spent at high-end restaurants, boutiques, and spas in 6 months. Would you describe that as reckless spending?" Laura stiffened. "I deserve to enjoy the success of the business." Amanda leaned forward. "Was it your business alone, or was it a joint venture with your husband, funded by his father's investment?" "It was joint." "Then why did you transfer the money without his knowledge or consent?" "He knew." Amanda held up another document. "Your phone records show no calls or messages to Daniel on the day of the transfer. The transaction happened at 9 a.m. Daniel was at a client meeting across town. How exactly did he know?" Laura's face flushed red. "I don't remember the details." "Convenient," Amanda said flatly. Then she shifted gears. "Let's discuss the mental health accusations. You claim Daniel sent you threatening text messages. Where are those messages now?" "I deleted them," Laura said. "I was scared." "You were afraid," Amanda repeated. "So you deleted the original evidence, but kept screenshots to show your lawyer?" "Yes." "The screenshots you submitted were reviewed by a digital forensics expert," Amanda continued. "They show signs of manipulation. The timestamps don't match phone records. Message threads are incomplete, and the metadata indicates the images were created on a computer, not captured from a phone." Can you explain that? Mark Ellison jumped up to object. Overruled, Judge Crawford said. Laura stumbled over her words. I don't know. Maybe my phone malfunctioned. Or maybe the messages were fabricated. The courtroom went dead silent. Amanda pressed on. You also claim Daniel was mentally unstable. Yet Dr. Karen Shaw's records, which are now in evidence, show no such instability. In fact, they show a man actively managing normal work-related stress. Were you aware of these records when you made your accusations? No. Did you ever encourage Daniel to seek therapy? No. So, Amanda said evenly. You claimed he was unstable, never encouraged him to get help, and when he sought help on his own, you used it against him. Laura didn't answer. Amanda turned to the judge. Your Honor, this case shows a coordinated and deliberate attempt to destroy a father's relationship with his children while stripping him of his financial resources. We've presented evidence of fraudulent transfers, fabricated messages, false accusations, and manipulated supervised visitation reports. Laura Collins and her family weaponized the family court system for personal financial gain. Mark Ellison stood. Your Honor, my client made mistakes, but her primary concern has always been the well-being of her children. Amanda fired back. If that were true, why were the children led to believe their father abandoned them? Why was his contact restricted? Why were they placed in an environment where they thought their dad didn't want them? She gestured toward the recordings. The audio shows children who love their father and are excited to see him. That's not the behavior of children being protected from an unstable parent. That's the behavior of children who have been lied to. Justice Crawford fixed her gaze on Laura. Mrs. Collins, she said, I have reviewed all the evidence before this court. The forensic accounting, the digital analysis, the witness testimony, the audio recordings. She paused. I find it deeply concerning that you made serious allegations against your ex-husband without credible proof. I find it even more troubling that funds were removed from a jointly owned business without documentation or consent. Then she turned to Daniel. Mr. Miller, I have reviewed Dr. Shaw's records and your current living situation. You have stable employment, stable housing, and your children are clearly thriving in your care. I see no evidence supporting the claims of instability made against you. She lifted her gavel. I am ordering an immediate modification of custody. Joint legal custody will be shared equally. Physical custody will be split 50-50, with equal parenting time for both parents. Supervised visitation is terminated. Mr. Miller will have unsupervised access to his children effective immediately. Laura gasped. Her mother jumped to her feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Sit down, Mrs. Collins, the judge said sharply. I'm not finished. She continued. I am also ordering Laura Collins to repay $280,000 to Daniel Miller, representing funds improperly taken from the business account. If repayment is not made within 90 days, this court will authorize seizure of assets. The room was frozen. Additionally, she said, this matter is being referred to the Crown Attorney's Office for potential criminal prosecution. This court does not tolerate fraud. She brought the gavel down. Court is adjourned. Daniel's legs gave out. I grabbed him before he hit the floor. He was crying, not from sadness, but from pure relief. Outside the courtroom, Ethan and Caleb came running toward him. They'd been waiting with a social worker. Daniel dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around both boys, holding them like he was afraid to let go. Daddy, Ethan asked, are we going home? Daniel choked up, smiling through tears. Yeah, buddy, we're going home. 3 months later, Laura's father, Richard Collins, was formally charged with fraud and tax evasion. Laura herself faced embezzlement charges. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal that required full repayment and a guilty plea to lesser charges in exchange for avoiding jail time. Most of the money came back. Legal fees took their share, but Daniel had enough left to rebuild and start again. And this time, he wasn't doing it alone. Daniel started over with a new business, and this time he did everything by the book. Every contract was airtight. Every decision went through a lawyer first. He wasn't taking chances anymore. Ethan and Caleb split their time between both parents, but more often than not, they were with Daniel. Laura, on the other hand, seemed to drift away. It was clear she was more focused on putting her own life back together than on being present as a mother. I decided to stay in Toronto. I rented a condo not far from Daniel's place, close enough to be part of their everyday lives. I see my grandsons 3 times a week now. We go to the park. I help them with homework. I'm teaching them how to play chess, even though they mostly just want to knock the pieces over. One evening, about a year after the day I found them in that parking lot, Daniel and I were sitting out on my balcony. The boys were inside, laughing and playing. Daniel looked over at me, quiet for a moment. I never really thanked you, he said. You don't need to, I told him. Yes, I do, he said. If you hadn't shown up that day, if you hadn't helped me fight back, I'd probably still be living in my car. Or worse, I would have lost my boys for good. I shook my head. You're my son. That's what fathers do. He stared out at the city for a bit. I honestly thought I'd lost everything. My wife, my house, my business, my kids. I started believing I was the problem. That maybe I really was unstable, and everyone else could see it but me. You were never the problem, I said. They wanted you to believe that. That's how abusers work. They make you doubt yourself. He nodded slowly. I know that now. But for months, I believed it. The court believed it. Everyone believed it, except you. I know my son, I said. I've known you since the day you were born. I know who you are, and you're not what they tried to turn you into. We sat there quietly, watching the sun dip behind the Toronto skyline. After a while, he spoke again. Dad, thank you. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. You would have done the same for your boys. He smiled. Yeah, I would. Because I learned it from you. From inside the condo, Ethan's voice rang out. Grandpa, come play Jenga with us. I stood up. Duty calls. Daniel laughed. Go. I'll order pizza. I walked inside and sat down with my grandsons, who were carefully stacking a wobbly tower of wooden blocks. Caleb looked up at me with a grin. Grandpa, he said, don't let it fall. I smiled and settled in. I won't, buddy. I promise. And I meant it. Not just the tower. Not just that moment. I meant everything. This family. These boys. My son. I'd protect them no matter what. Because that's what family does. We don't let each other fall.